So this, next slide. One of the things I just want to mention is the Lost Century was crowdfunded, and look at the subtitle, How to Reclaim It. Because there's a century of technological and scientific progress that would greatly benefit all of humanity, not just the United States. We all live on this beautiful sphere floating through space together. It needs to very much come forward. It's 100 years is long enough for secrecy. Next. So I want to introduce someone I've gotten to know. We first met last year. By the way, all of these military guys have been, and corporate folks have been to the Aero SCIF, the Secure Compartment Information Facility. The Disclosure Project has funded all of this for their personal needs and travel. That's why we appreciate your donations and contributions. But Colonel Heckert, he is a retired and very decorated United States Air Force Command pilot. During his extensive career, Colonel Heckert flew over 100 combat reconnaissance missions, including 11 years in high-altitude aircraft developed by the Lockheed Skunk Works. These were not the alien reproduction vehicles, such as the U-2 and the TR-1, and flew alongside the famed SR-71 Blackbird. In the late 70s and early 1980s, Colonel Heckert commanded the nation's largest nuclear monitoring facilities and radiological processing lab, and was responsible for the airborne collection of debris from nuclear explosions worldwide. Later, he was commander of classified operations in the Middle East and subsequently served as a special project director at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where he was involved with countless classified development operations. Colonel Heckert also spent time working out of Groom Lake, Area 51, where he conducted flight operations and project management, evaluation, and research. Please welcome my friend and hero of our country, Colonel Heckert.
Please. Well, thank you for being here and listening. I need to establish just a couple facts. I've been involved with SCI vaults and code words since 1964, and my last access with the Air Force and other agencies was 1967. For the last 8 months, I've been involved again in SCI discussions, thanks to this gentleman and all of these people sitting next to you and all of those volunteers. The things I want to share are first just a little bit of historical information quickly. You know the name Kelly Johnson. Kelly Johnson and the gentleman, Ben Rich, who succeeded him, I got to know very well. I've got a 1953 UFO report signed by Kelly Johnson and his engineers, and in that same UFO thing, about 4 hours later, it appears over his house. And Dr. Greer has a letter that Kelly Johnson sent to the National Director of Intelligence saying, this is real, this needs to be investigated. I am very fortunate to have been a pilot. I've got over 7,000 hours of time. I currently live in Alaska with my wife, Alice, and a whole bunch of grandchildren, and that's a real blessing. The two documented encounters, and I'm sorry that, do they have that up on the screen, or are they just showing that on? I'll make sure it's available, but these are the two airplanes that I flew that had UFO encounters. The first one was during the latter stages of the Vietnam War. I was flying an operation called Linebacker 3 going into Laos. I was in an orbit at 14,500 feet just south of the Laotian border, and my two armed escorts, because the RF is unarmed, and they're there to protect me, were delayed on takeoff. So I'm doing just a racetrack type of orbit. there are things that monitor in warfare called GCI sites. These are radar sites that vector in the fighters to the people that are intercepting you. What happens next is that I get an alert from 3 GCI sites and the early foreman AWACS that I've got traffic that is a fast mover near Mach 1 coming out of North Vietnam, Laos, heading for me in orbit. That concerns me because my armed escort isn't there. Now I'm completing about halfway down this next pathway, and they tell me, oh, don't worry, that target is above 70,000 feet, and you know it can't get at you at this point. So I'm a little relieved, but then I finally get to see it, and it's on a wavelength of light that I've only seen one other place, and that is in a nuclear pile on an active nuclear power generation, and it's called Teller light. It is very unique, very white, very, very bright. So we look up, and it's an 11 o'clock, and over here off my left shoulder about 10 o'clock. My backseater is stumbling to make their emergency detection systems and our defensive systems active. We watch this thing, and it's way above there, and I'm a little relieved until all of a sudden, through the mid-term of the orbit, it comes from 70,000 feet down to 12,500 feet in 2 seconds. And now it's tracking off my nose and staying at 5 nautical miles away. That sets off everything in my aircraft. The 3 GCIs and the AWACS are really concerned about me at this point. And as we go on parallel with this thing flying at 5 miles an hour, I'm really concerned. And then they ask me, will you intercept this if you can? Well, the airplane, the RF-4C, is a Mach 2 plus airplane. I've been in flight for a little while, and so I've probably, if I go to afterburner, only have about 15 minutes of fuel left, but I agreed to intercept. The reason I did was I have a new, one-of-the-kind IR infrared sensor, but it's on the bottom of the airplane. So my backseater and I agree, hey, this is important, we can see this, we need to document it. I go to afterburner, and we accelerate very quickly through Mach 1, go up to about Mach 1.2, and I close to within 3 nautical miles of this UFO. And we've got it now on our radar, we've got it pegged. The guy in the back seat can't see it on his display because that sensor's pointing down. So I pitch up, do a supersonic climb up, and he says, we got it, we got it, we got it. That white light at 3 miles goes out of sight within less than 2 seconds. And they say, don't worry about it. It's above 80,000 feet in those 2 seconds. I go back to the home base because I'm out of fuel, land, all that material, all the mission material is confiscated, and I'm told, don't talk about it. Well, what happens next is I'm not happy with that answer because I've seen something very, very real. I call the GCI site on what's called the Audubon or telephone system. I say, hey, I'd like to talk to the senior controller that was on duty, tell him I was a UFO pilot that they were just controlling, and he comes on the phone and says, hey, we're all really excited about this. And then I hear him say, yes, sir. Okay. He says, bye. Click. I couldn't talk to the other 2 GCI sites, and that goes away, and I never know anything about it until later. The next one is on a U2R, and that's a blackbird. I'm at 70,000 feet above that on the DMZ of Korea. This has been a combo mission, which means I'm taking photo intelligence during the daylight, and then I'm doing what is called an ELINT comment mission in a butterfly track 3 miles off the DMZ. We have a sunshade that protects you during the daytime in the U2 because the sunlight's so intense. You're about above 98% of the atmosphere at that point. Anyway, I have that slidden back, everything's looking good, and all of a sudden I am blinded by that same frequency light from above. It turns my black airplane white. And the U-2, as the last-ditch saving method to avoid a missile, can do a turn at less than 7 nautical miles at the same altitude the SR-71 is at. SR-71 takes 160 miles to do that same U-turn. There is nothing, to my knowledge, in the world that is man-made that can stay with the U-2 at that altitude, turning the max turn, unless it's another U-2. This light tracks me from above. Now, I can show you later missiles that come between me and my other RF-4. My airplane's got holes in it. They never made me abort a reconnaissance operational mission. This scared me so bad that I had to abort. But when I land, normal debrief does not take place. They just say, go shower and go to your room. Okay. So what happens next in my career is that because of my wife's concern, she says, hey, we got to take a respite of this. By the way, she worked at Air America at Udorn Air Force Base in Thailand for the CIA. Anyway, she says, we got to get out of this. You know, you're getting a little too tense, and now we have 2 children, and I'm worried. So I take an assignment to what's called AVTAC, and AVTAC was established in its predecessor in 1945 due to the development and the concern of Little Boy and Fat Man, the 2 nuclear bombs. Those are important because we have a detailed history of air sampling, pollution sampling, and it was primary pollution that they were concerned about radiologically from 1945 on. At that point, I'm assigned at a base commander level. I have sites all over, and I'm sorry I can't show you a slide of that, but we're involved in things like the raising of K-129. It's a video that's been put out about 5 years ago that shows my site at Attu detected the breakup of that submarine. That same site at Attu and my seismic site will sense a nuclear underwater, deep underwater test out of South Africa, and that's called the Vela, V-E-L-A incident. And my boss at headquarters is fired over that incident, but 2 years later, because the administration denied that that test ever took place, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Mathis, the Chief Scientist for the White House, and the Secretary of the Interior come to my vault, and they want a briefing on our data and if we really think that that happened. They left believing it really happened, and as a result, South Africa destroys 4 nuclear warheads they had. Israel will never admit that they were part of that joint venture. From there, I go to Europe as one of the first 4 in the TR-1 program, and through just accidental events again, because of the sickness that our intel officer goes through, I'm the only one that has a code word clearance. And so I'm assigned to do his duties while he recovers. And I'm exposed to all of the peacetime aerial reconnaissance data in Europe and Africa. I'm in charge of scheduling those events and trying to get us integrated with the TR-1 into the peacetime aerial program in the European theater. From there, this is supposed to be a 4-year assignment. At the 14th month of my tour in Europe, I am required to, or I was asked, do I want to fly a high flyer again? And of course I said yes. They do a process when you go to a classified site called sheep dipping. And so they put fictitious orders in your official files. I go overseas and work in the Middle East and actually work with Delta Force on a hijacking in June of 1985 during that tour, and we lost a soldier on the ramp. But this is in direct coordination with MI6 because it's a British base, and that's now declassified. But it was quite an experience. The only problem is that there was a conflict in the chain of command. I was supposed to be the chief test pilot for the U-2 program back at Edwards. That's a follow-on assignment they promised me. Instead, that assignment's canceled. I'm held in that remote location for 10 days. My wife is about to disown me, and I am told I'm going to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The new job for the first 6 months is Director of High Altitude Test for the Air Force. The next job, and this is through the end of my career, is the Program Director for the U-2, TR-1, SR-71, and other advanced classified programs. I need to transfer to this and tell you about a recovery that we did called Project Morning Light. It is a reconnaissance satellite that comes down, and eventually parts of it end up in Gray Slate Lake, and there's radioactivity that's cleaned up from that. That also involves a U-2, or pardon me, a UFO. The other thing I want to just share with you is the 3 events in Area 51. And those events themselves are first a security breach. And the reason I'm there is because some of my funds in my black programs, and I was required to justify that black budget to the House and Senate Select Intelligence Committee on a quarterly basis. Some of those funds are not being spent. My projects aren't going forward. I'm there, and I overhear 2 people talking about using Navy sensors to photograph an aerial vehicle that's flying at night, and they're going to make a lot of money. Well, I report that immediately. Those people are arrested, and I don't know anything more about that event, except none of that imagery they took got released. The next one is that I have a number of cost overruns in my projects. I'm back, and I look, and I'm finding that other programs are using my funds diverted for their use, and that's what's slowing my developments, and I'm very upset about it. The last part, and this is, gosh, I'm sorry I'm having my senior moments, if you'll forgive me, but I will let you, but I'm available afterwards. I'm sorry I've taken so long. I know this is a tiring briefing.
Thank you.